It's time to rethink how we raise our pets, a reset to naturally healthy dogs and cats. My name is Jessica. I'm a certified professional canine nutritionist, raw nutrition certified for dogs and cats, a holistic pet health coach, the founder of Wild Wellness Pet, and the host of the Pet Parenting Reset podcast, where every pet deserves the absolute best and every pet parent is welcome. Learn from the best holistic and integrative experts in veterinary medicine and nutrition every Tuesday, right here on this podcast. Or get individualized help with your pet through one-on-one consultations and take a deep dive into the root cause with the Wild Wellness Bioenergetics at-home test kit. If you've been feeling like there has to be something more, something better, a better way to raise healthier pets, welcome to the Pet Parenting Reset. Welcome back, pet parent. Today's episode is such a fun one. I have been looking forward to this one for a while. Today's guest is Sean Zier with Earth Buddy. Welcome back to the podcast, Sean.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I love Earth Buddy's products, and I have been kind of impatiently waiting. I think I've texted you one too many times about when is the glutathione going to come up? When is that going to be on the website? When is it going to be available? And you're very, very kind, and you're like, I'm only one person. I'll do it. I'll get it done, which I totally understand. So we are going to talk today about the glutathione product. We're going to talk about the study that you had done. Before we get there, I want to talk, because I've already, like, people in my orbit that I have recommended this product to have already seen amazing results with it. So I definitely want to talk about that. But before we do, I want to give everybody like kind of a recap of who you are and what Earth Buddy is and why you do what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So Earth Buddy was started in 2015, somewhat accidentally, somewhat on purpose, for the simple fact that I had a dog that was drug resistant to the typical seizure medications that they prescribe. And she would have cluster seizures. So her name is Kiva, and we got her from a family member. And I thought I was this big tough guy, thinking I would just take her in for 30 days. And if she doesn't respond to anything I give her, I'll just put her down. I'm so tough. And obviously, I immediately fell in love with her. And being in the pet industry and my background is in pet food and pet nutrition, felt it really necessary to try everything. And she was 13. She was emaciated. She wasn't eating. She was like a gas station kibble dog. No bad feelings towards the people who owned her. They were family members, but they just didn't know. And so they knew that I was in the pet industry and I could help her a little bit, or at least give her a little bit of quality of life. So my thought was like, let's just give her good food, feed her, whole foods and supplements and see what happens. And, in that process, falling in love with Kiva, she became part of our family, and I was willing to do anything for her and keep her around a little bit longer. Simultaneously, the introduction and legalization of hemp came about in 2014. So some of the first crops of hemp ever grown for over 100 years started happening in Colorado. So being always 1 degree separated from cannabis in Colorado, partnered with our farm that is ran by two scientists, two PhDs that know more about cannabis than any two people I know in the world. And they were only growing on a small farm that practices regenerative and organic agriculture, or horticulture in this case, because we only grow on 3 acres. So I really felt like I could trust them, because at the time there was not a lot of products I trusted. And, you fast forward almost 10 years and I still feel the same way. Like, hey, there's a lot of sketchy stuff out there. And we were able to give her some quality of life, not just on the health issue side, but just give her the dignity that she deserves and every pet deserves. And so it was really amazing to see that. And we were able to keep her around another year and a half. So to the point where she started attacking my other little guy, Tito. He was like my soul dog. She started attacking him because she felt so good that she was like, you know what? I'm sick of this little guy. So that was the starting point of Earth Buddy, was in the CBD and hemp side. And then we've since transitioned to not just CBD, but other hemp cannabinoids or molecules that the plant produces, different formulations for different issues. And we are not just adamant about using one molecule or one thing. We're really about trying to address a number of challenges that pet owners go through. It's like, what is the delivery mechanism of this product? In terms of supplements, we see so much out there, and they're typically, in a treat. And it's like, okay, treats are great. We make great treats as well, but we wanted to create different delivery systems, whether that's, an encapsulation or a liposomal form to make it more absorbable and pass the digestive tract, or, a faster acting form of CBD that is in distilled water that works a little bit faster and absorbs transmucosally. All that to say is, like, we want to make products that work effectively, and we know that every pet is so different and every pet is an individual. So we're not saying there's a one size fits all, and we want to make a number of different products that address, the main things that we see, like, stress is the biggest one, but also, achy joints, gut health, digestive upset, all the things that we typically see with pets. We want to make something for them in a number of ways, whether it's a pill, powder, oil, or treat.
I appreciate that actually because I think treats are very popular, but I for year I can't get my dog to eat a CBD treat. I can't do it. I've tried so many different companies. Um, I my initial thought was like, well, she just doesn't want it because it's not meat flavored. Like she likes meat. She's not eating if I have to hide her veggies in her food. She will not just eat a vegetable. She will not like, it just doesn't happen. Sometimes she'll eat cheese. She wants meat all the time. But even the ones that have come out that are, like, meat flavored or whatever, no, she doesn't want that. I don't know what it is with her. She's
No,
like,
it's
"No, I don't want those."
it's funny you say that, and it just speaks to the individuality
Mhm.
of us and our pets. And one of the things we saw with Kiva when we started the company was she wasn't eating her food. And I was putting down stuff that was like the best food on the market in 2015, like literally raw meat or even cooked food. She wouldn't touch it. And one of the reasons why we started with our CBD treats in a biscuit form was we were using real blueberries and real whole foods and just simple ingredients, like limited ingredients. And she would eat our blueberry treats. And I don't know what it was about the blueberry treats specifically, but that was one of our like first products that I was like, oh my gosh, she's actually eating. And that actually stimulated her appetite enough to get the food in her. And I really think, CBD was a big factor in helping her. I really think that just stimulating her appetite and getting the foods in her was really the catalyst to keep her around as long as we did.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's one of the big things we look for. Well, we did an episode a while back that was all about senior dogs, and I know we talked about a lot of this in that episode, so I don't wanna rehash things that we've already talked about too terribly much. I mean, I do want people listening to know that there aren't a whole lot of CBD or even mushroom brands that I recommend that I would use myself. And so when I do find brands that I am comfortable, like I'm like, no, I would give this to my pets. Then I want to make sure that I'm highlighting you guys and bringing you on and giving you a space to talk to anybody who decides they, for whatever reason, want to listen to me. Who knows why? But doing it the right way, making sure that the products that are coming off of your shelves are actually clean and they aren't full of heavy metals and toxins and because that's a big deal with both CBD or hemp and mushrooms. So what if you've had other products like you've had
Sure.
colostrum, you've had um, a glutathione product, but this new glutathione product. is formulated differently. What's the one? Why did you venture out of hemp and mushrooms? And then what did you do differently?
Yeah, well, I mean, anytime you think about just health in general with our pets, we took a step back and we said, like, what are the main things? Well, our soft spot is senior dogs, like you mentioned, and we've talked about that. But we're looking at, what are the common issues we see, and there's a number of ways we can tackle these issues, but like, what are the pathways and what are different ways we can address them? And when you really get down to just overall longevity and health of animals, we looked at cellular health. And when it comes to glutathione and just kind of addressing what we see is like, in today's world, we are exposed to so many different toxins. And when we say toxins, I'm talking about the air pollution, what's in our water in terms of heavy metals and things like that, and treatments in our water. Our food is pretty loaded with heavy metals as well. And it's hard to kind of like tackle all these things with a million different things. So when we took a step back and looked at that, it's like, when you look at oxidative stress, which is just like aging that happens naturally as we age. And when you look at pets, they age so much faster. What is a pathway we can address that we haven't thought about yet? And during COVID, we saw that a lot of people, we were worried about getting sick and trying to get over those colds sometimes. Sometimes people were getting sick for a long time. And so our chemist was using glutathione as a way to kind of help with those colds, those common colds and things that we see typically in humans. Simultaneously, we had a dog on the farm named Max, and Max was 16, and he was every bit of 16. He was had achy joints and things like that. And what we saw is like giving him a ton of CBD would help with his achy joints and just like his discomfort as a 16-year-old Jack Russell that's been on a farm, hunting and, scavenging, finding dead rabbits and stuff like that. But it would also like sedate him pretty heavily. And I don't think that was the right answer. And so what Jeremy started doing was he started giving him the glutathione, and it really changed how he was absorbing his food, how he's digesting things and just his overall attitude. And so simultaneously, my soul dog Tito, he was not eating either. And he had a form of cancer. He had a tumor on his thyroid and it was progressing really fast. And so at that time, I thought days with him and I was desperate. And as most of us get to the point with our pets when they get older, is like, I'll do anything to say goodbye to them a little bit longer. And so I was like, well, it can't hurt. And so we started giving Tito the glutathione combined with CBD and some other like CBG and CBDA. And we saw a huge difference. He started eating food again and started wanting to go on walks again. And so I kept him around another 3 months because of that product. And that's really where Max Life, our original glutathione product, came in.
Well,
That
let me stop you really quickly because what is glutathione? Why are we reaching for it? What does it do in the body?
so yeah, that's a great yeah, I'm glad you interrupted that. So let's just back up. So glutathione is the master antioxidant of the body. It is literally in every cell of our body. And its main function is in phase one and phase two detoxification. So it helps to capture and neutralize toxins in your body that we encounter in our food and just, household cleaners, things like that, and it helps remove those things from our body. It also helps replenish other antioxidants in the body, like vitamin C and vitamin E, which are super important. But the thing about that is with such a big toxic burden, especially on pets as they get older, they don't produce as much. So glutathione is primarily produced in the liver. It's manufactured in the liver. And when we started looking at Max Life, we were like, okay, this is a pretty complicated product and it's got a pretty low dose of glutathione and the aminos that are the building blocks of glutathione. So what glutathione is a tripeptide, and it could be a protein. It's not a protein. That's a whole different deeper dive. But basically, we wanted to take the building blocks of glutathione in the amino acid form, like glycine, glutamate, and alpha lipoic acid and acetylcysteine. These are all things that you could take to encourage your natural production. And we wanted to combine those with glutathione. So glutathione, regardless if it's absorbed or not, passes through if you take it supplementally pretty quick. So if you go get an IV for it, it'll help you feel really good. Like for people, if they drink too much alcohol, you can go get an IV of that and it'll kind of clean that up really quick and you'll feel better. But you basically pass that through really quickly. So what we wanted to do is create a kind of a full system that addresses not only giving you a good dose of glutathione on the front end that's going to be absorbable in a form which is encapsulated that passes the digestive tract, gives you that dose of glutathione, but also these amino acids that encourage your natural production of it. So we're not just like, here's a big dose and then it passes through and then you're kind of done with it. And the issue keeps coming back of, not being able to remove these toxins that our pets and us sit with. So the idea behind the new product in our liposomal glutathione was to have like a liver detox system that is a much bigger dose of glutathione, but also a bigger dose of the aminos that encourage that natural production. So then when you're having these issues like, the itchy scratchies that you just can't figure out, constant paw licking, eye irritation. We can go down the wormhole of a million different kind of autoimmune things. People are just throwing stuff at a wall a lot of times. And we didn't want them to have to keep doing that with these expensive products. What we find with the glutathione is that it knocks a lot of these things out really quickly, or at least gets their production of glutathione so they're not as irritated by them. And so obviously the pinnacle of addressing your glutathione production or your pet's glutathione, in this case, dogs, is diet. So fruits and vegetables are going to have plenty of glutathione, or at least the building blocks to help encourage that natural production. But again, as pets age, they're just not able to produce it as easily. So we wanted to create something that actually not only supplements that and gives them a good dose of it, but also encourages the natural production on the back end.
Okay. I want to keep talking about this, but I feel like it's a little heavy. It's a little heavy for people. So I want to take a break. I want to pause that discussion and kind of reroute a little bit, and we'll come back to it and we'll come back to the study because I think it is really important. But something else that is also important, you touched on it, is that like we have really, really heavy toxic loads. Even when we try to do our best, like we're actually aware, which a lot of people aren't aware of the toxic loads on them, much less their pets, because we are bigger, we can kind of handle more. We go outside and we off gas. Like our cats, especially, aren't really doing that. But the world we live in, what we have created, what we've done to it is just so toxic. Like you said, our air, our water, that doesn't even include cleaners and fabric softeners and air fresheners and candles and beauty products and all of the things. Like I know I have one client that when we first started working together, one of the things I talked to her about was, she's just that age where I had to ask her the question, do you have any sort of like topical cream for hormone therapy? Because I
Hmm.
want to make sure that's not being transferred to your dog when you're petting that. Like there are so many things we don't think about. And it is just a really, really toxic world. That being said, there are also so many supplements out there for pets. We not even getting into like the human realm, but just for pets, it's really, really highly unregulated, which is a good thing and a bad thing in some ways, depending on how you look at it, because regulatory bodies can also suck, which we were talking about
Yeah.
before we started recording. Why? Why do people trust Earth Buddy for supplements for their pets? When we look at it this way, when we look at like all of the shiny objects out there, There are so many supplements. What do we choose? This one's cheaper. I can get it at Target. Why shouldn't I just get this one? Why do people trust Earth Buddy in this kind of context of
Yeah, I think it's an important note. So I think one of the things that we really tried to do, even prior to having third party certifications or any of that for for the category that we're in of, primarily CBD, mushrooms, and just natural supplements, is we found that nobody was sharing third party lab tests. And when we started looking at that, we said, well, how does the cannabis industry do it? And so in Colorado, if you're a manufacturer here in Colorado, there's a certain requirements that you have to test for with finished products, but also just with us partnering with a farm and having kind of full transparency and traceability of the product. We want to test, at the plant level. And so we're required to test in multiple ways and have licensing to do so. So when we were creating that, we're like, okay, with any of our suppliers, we should have third party testing. So with all of our products, we have QR codes, regardless if it's a CBD product or not, that they can go and scan and go to our third party lab tests on our website. And we share that by lot code and everything. So full transparency is such a big deal because you want to know what you're buying. If something says, 100 milligrams on it, I want to see that they have a third party lab test that has no association with that company, that they paid for a lab test. And, I think it's a really big deal now. Um, Not as much as we'd like, but, I think more companies are doing that. But we wanted to take that a step further and say, okay, we're not just going to do that with CBD. We're going to do that with mushrooms. We're going to show the potency of our mushrooms. And that just doesn't mean saying like, oh, there's 100 milligrams of lion's mane in this product. We want to say, okay, what are the active compounds in there? And we want to test for those and we want to show that those are in there. So, the active compounds that are primarily focused on for mushrooms, for instance, is beta glucans, which are these immune activating compounds that help with a number of different things. There's also ergothioneine, which is a really potent antioxidant in mushrooms. And then the really cool one is that mushrooms contain glutathione naturally. So we are now testing for those. I think, when it comes to quality and trust, I think the first step is, with any ingredient, not just CBD or cannabis or hemp, is to do they have lab tests that show, that it is what you're buying? And do they have tests that show that it's free of heavy metals, chemical pesticides, mycotoxins? There's a million things that we should be testing for, and we can trace all of that. So it's important to start there from a testing standpoint. On the glutathione side, we actually had to create, because we neighbor next to a testing lab. We had to create an assay to create the glutathione test to find out, like, okay, we want to say there's this much glutathione in there, and this is, how much you're getting when you're using this product. So that was a whole fun road to go down, because in part of that testing, we had to give a lot of different samples, and we used our mushrooms in that process. And we're like, I had no idea that glutathione just naturally occurs in mushrooms. So yeah, really cool ways of finding out what's actually in the product and the active ingredients that we're putting on the label.
that's so interesting. I still have questions about this. What I mean, not questions, some questions maybe, but I have definitely come into contact with companies, especially companies that are putting out products for humans. Like just the other day, somebody asked me about this like mushroom coffee thing, which obviously is for humans, not for
Mhm.
pets. And that was one of the things I said. I was like, I'm looking at the website. I don't see a COA. I don't know if they're testing for, the efficacy of their mushrooms. I don't know if they're testing the heavy metals. I don't know. And what was interesting was they contacted the company and asked for it. And they were like, yeah, here it is. But like, why aren't you putting it on the website? Why are you making so people jump through it? Like, that is bothersome to me.
Can speak to that a little bit. And there's a lot of I don't want to say, there's a lot of like lack of information and understanding like what's important in the mushroom world. So in the
Mhm.
mushroom world right now, we know there's compounds that have been studied and show benefits for XYZ. the dosage of them is really confusing because we're like, well, we're not isolating that one compound. We're using a whole mushroom.
Mhm.
And in our case, we're using the fruit body and the mycelium. And there's compounds in both that are really beneficial. And so, really, what most, I'm kind of sticking up for that mushroom coffee.
Sure, yeah.
There's a synergistic effect that you cannot sit there and say it has that one compound, so therefore it's better, because there might be some other synergistic compounds that, even though it's not in a big level, that compound you're looking for, it works synergistically with the whole mushroom.
Mhm.
That's why a lot of companies, I think, are not sharing those things. And I think that's not the end of the world. I think more importantly is just knowing that it's safe, because we have to start there, is knowing that the companies are doing that, and that that company was willing to share that. So I think there's a lot of kind of, I guess, controversy a little bit, but like, of like, what is the efficacious level of, you know beta glucans or cordycepin and cordyceps, or
Mhm.
erinacines and lion's mane, like all these different really complicated compounds. But ultimately, what we think is there needs to be a synergistic effect when you talk about a natural supplement. And
Mhm.
the goal for Earth Buddy is to keep it as natural as it was when it was growing in the wild or in the ground as possible, because we feel like that synergistic effect is more important. The idea behind that, or the entourage effect, when we talk about cannabis or hemp, is the idea of we want the minimal effective dose to achieve the desired response without side effects. With
Mhm.
like, we don't want you to have to use a lot. And this is a conversation I have all the time with pet parents, is like, with any of our supplements, we'd rather you start much, much lower and get the desired effect you're looking for, and then that product lasts longer, rather than thinking more is better. And that's more of that Western drug or pharmaceutical mentality, or Western medicine mentality of like, more is better. We got to load the dose on the front end, those kind of things. We're not talking about a buildup either. I hear that phrase a lot. It's like, oh, I got to build it up. Yes and no. What we say is, it's more, you're training their system, or whatever pathway you're trying to work on, you're training that to operate a little bit more efficiently. So in the case of cannabis, we're like, okay, we're using CBD, or a CBDA. We want to engage their cannabinoid system to start responding more efficiently, or activating more efficiently than it was, whether it's dealing with stress or achy joints. In the glutathione case, it's like, hey, your pet is getting older. They're starting to slow down. Their personality is starting to, they're being more tired or lethargic. If we can load their body with antioxidants and then signal to their antioxidant production pathways, well, that's going to help them feel better and be a little bit more rambunctious. So I think when we talk about natural supplements, it's so easy to kind of relate it to drugs. And I think that's the wrong way. I think we're using a supplement to actually add to their diet and the natural things they're doing.
So, okay, let's jump back over to the glutathione. I I had one person that I was working with, she was actually a veterinarian, and she had been working with her dogs for quite a while. They were both really itchy, had tons of environmental and food sensitivities. She did a lot over the course of the few months that I knew, like, we were working together, and switching their foods and trialing different food, doing all kinds of things, onboarding different supplements. And she got them to a point where she was like, "Okay, like, yes, they're still a little bit itchy, but it's so much more manageable. They're not, like, bleeding, they're not killing themselves over it anymore." And as soon as this new glutathione product came up on the website, she ordered it, and within about a week, she was like, "This was what we needed to get over that hump. They're not itching anymore." So that has been, like, one of the biggest, like, "Oh my gosh, this was amazing. Thank you for having me add this into my pet's routine," stories that I've had. But what did you do, like, what was this study for? What were you studying? How did you study it? Like, tell me
So
about that.
the study is not underway yet, actually.
Oh,
We're
okay.
we're going to start enrolling people. And I'm glad you brought it up because I need to promote it as much as possible. So the idea behind it is so many dogs come into the vet practice and have elevated liver enzymes. And what we see in our world, especially a CBD company that makes different hemp supplements, we see dogs that use CBD consistently are almost always going to have elevated liver enzymes. And so that's not necessarily a bad thing, but some enzymes can be a indicator of other issues going on. So what we would like to see is that these dogs with chronically elevated liver enzymes can see a lowering of those enzymes in a 30-day period. So we want to get pet owners that have these consistent issues have a recent liver panel that shows that their enzymes are elevated. And then we want to get them on the glutathione and see over that 30-day period when we test again that those enzymes have gone down. So we'll be enrolling in that we'll probably start promoting it in the next week or two. So I don't know when this is going to come out. So hopefully by then we can really promote that because ideally we want 30 dogs. We're not going to have dogs that are, like have liver disease or anything. We want a relatively healthy pets to kind of conduct this pilot study because what we really want to do is this is a pilot study to just kind of show here's our take and here's what we think it can do. And if it does, that should lead to bigger studies in supplementing not only glutathione, but these amino acids to dogs that have these liver issues. And we can do a much broader study across a bigger population and really get some good data to support what we're talking about here.
So to me, like, I know with my dog, Kim, she's a smaller dog. And the first time I ever did blood work on her, which was about 3 years ago, which was crazy. I don't know what happened, why I didn't have blood work done on her. I think it's just because a lot of veterinarians are like, your dog's healthy. We don't need to do blood work on them until they're like getting into their senior years. And then they're always going to be like, oh, yeah, we just need to do routine blood work. But she had elevated liver enzymes, and what was interesting was that I did start her on a full spectrum hemp, and gosh, I hope I don't get this wrong. It was her ALT that was elevated, and the CBD decreased her ALT but increased her ALP, I believe it was. And I was like, "Well, okay, I'm okay with that." Like, I was expecting that at least. And I was like, "Okay, great. We got her liver enzymes down." So to me, I'm like, okay, that might be the kind of dog you're thinking of. Like she's healthy, she's getting along just fine, but like her liver enzymes were elevated. And you're like, well, glutathione can help with this.
Yeah. So the idea is like for in that case is like we don't necessarily know what the issue is and there
Mhm.
necessarily be an issue, but we want to see that those enzymes can go down because it doesn't always mean something bad. So
Mhm.
that might prevent, like significant cost in going to the vet and having these further tests and biopsies and all kinds of really like stressful things on the pet, especially as they're getting older. um, if you don't mind, I'd like to back up a little bit because when we talk about glutathione, I think it's very important that we address just like main pillars of health.
Yeah.
And I know you do this with everybody, but I think if we just take a step back, when we talk about just aging in our pets and ourselves, some basic levers that we can pull are, exercise and not over exercising because over exercising can tax glutathione production and stores. So I think regular exercise, good quality exercise, um, I think avoiding ultra processed foods, and this is all obvious.
What? What?
I know, but I think it's so important to say because I think when you say glutathione, one, it's a mouthful of a word. People, even people I really respect in the veterinary and just overall health community barely know what it is still. So when we talk about glutathione, it's like if we're eating too much ultra processed food, we're not exercising enough, we're in a house that we're using household chemicals, or we're on the other side of it is we're we're on a number of pharmaceuticals that can really tax the liver as well and decrease that glutathione production. This is the master antioxidant of the body. It is completely vital at the cellular level in every person and pet that we're talking about today. So it is such an important antioxidant that we need. And when we start to diminish it or, tax the liver and its ability to produce that, we are going to age faster. That's the bottom line. So I just wanted to back up and just address that, because I think with just regular, exercise and avoiding ultra processed foods, we can really help maintain that natural production. But then, as we get older, I think there's nothing wrong with supplementing it. And that's where we can step in. Like the story you shared, I think that's typically what we're hearing across the board, because we knew Max Life was already kind of doing this, but it had a lot of other antioxidants like vitamin C. It had flavonoids that like quercetin, which is like, nature's Benadryl, I've heard it called. It has things like elderberry, which contains quercetin and has a ton of vitamin C in it. We have a very complicated product in Max Life where like people don't really understand what Max Life is. Um, and it's a lower dose and it's a more like just antioxidant flush. Let's create an actual like detox system that we think is going to be a little bit more comprehensive and a little bit stronger when you have the issues like the vet that you're working with. And so many pet owners that I talked to in kind of the pre-launch of the product was like, hey, my dog has this thing on their ear and they just itch it to death. In certain times of the year, like in the fall, when they start fertilizing all the lawns, especially if you live in an apartment, they are treating all the lawns across the country and dogs are itchy and scratchy like crazy. This is something that we can use to kind of help them be less irritated during that time. And we're really thinking this is probably going to be a supplement that you can use, in certain times of the year, or to kind of knock out an issue and then get the other supplements or other, whole food additives that you can add into the diet that are really beneficial and they'll absorb them better.
So, two things. One, I think what you just said, or at least how I put it together, was that the liposomal glutathione product is going to be like a we need something big. Let's get in here, get this detox going, really help the body, support it with the glutathione, with the everything to support the body's own natural production of glutathione, like acute, we need to get this done. And then maybe supporting that system afterwards with the Max Life.
Yeah, and I think it's yes, and I'm glad you heard it that way, because really what we're thinking, because again, we don't know your pet.
Yeah.
You know your pet better than us. And so what we're trying to say is like, hey, if there's something like really challenging that you cannot figure out and you're spinning your wheels, I have them on Apoquil, I have them on Cytopoint, whatever, because they're scratching their face off. I don't shame people for having to use pharmaceuticals. They are necessary. They work because they're drugs and they pay a lot of money to study them and prove their efficacy. I understand that. However, that's not something 99% of pet parents want to be on for the rest of the animal's life. And a lot of times when you constantly have to use those pharmaceuticals, it does tax other things. There's always trade-offs with this stuff. So what we are thinking is like, hey, if there's something that you just cannot figure out and things aren't working, this is a really great option that at minimum can flood their body with antioxidants, start the detoxification process, remove those bad things, capture and neutralize those toxins. And now they're in a better place that some of these things that they're already doing or have already considered doing will really take effect a lot better. To that point, what you said is yes, if it's something that we need to address right on the nose, let's get them on the higher dose liver detox system. And then once they're through that, transitioning to a more maintenance with the Max Life would be an amazing option. What we found since we've had Max Life out for almost 5 years now, what we found is people can stay on that pretty consistently without issue. What I see, kind of on the initial launch since we launched at Super Zoo in Las Vegas is if they knock out that issue with the new product of liposomal glutathione in a higher dose, they don't necessarily need to stay on it. And I think, again, some pet parents can think more is better. And so if you use too much, you might cause some digestive upset, just like any supplement. And I think they can actually start reducing that dosage and just kind of create a maintenance level dose. And so even just using the new product, even though it's a higher dose, you can just reduce the dosage and still kind of signal to that glutathione production to produce more naturally.
The second thing was I wanted to maybe put a little bit more context around what you were saying about diet and exercise. And maybe you can help fill in the blanks for me if I have any in this. I don't even know who I'm like pulling this reference from because I feel like I've heard so many different people say it in so many different contexts. But if we look at like our dog's body or even just specifically their liver as like a glass, like a that you would drink out of, like a glass that you would drink out of. And all of the things that the liver has to do, the liver has to process. So the cleaner that you used on the floor last night, the air freshener that you have plugged into the wall, the chemicals that are sprayed on the lawn, the vaccine that they got 6, 8, 10 months ago. The like all of the things are adding into that cup that the liver is having to deal with. The AGEs and all of the oxidated fats or whatever in the kibble that you're feeding them, the ultra processed foods, the like everything is just adding and adding and adding to where the liver is like so overwhelmed. And so, yes, a product the way I'm seeing it, a product like the liposomal glutathione was going to help, especially the higher dose one that we're talking about today is going to help and knock those things down. But you also need to be working on reducing those things for them as well to kind of keep their liver at a point where they can actually manage it better.
Yeah.
Is that what
Yeah,
I think
that's
that's
a
what
that's a great way to put it. And so when you think about the toxic burden that our liver is already undergoing as just living in on Earth, and living in
yeah.
America, and the lack of regulation on certain things and the over prescribing of certain medications, specifically ones that, the liver has to process. I think it's important that we address that filter that literally cleans our blood and then reintroduces glutathione back into the body so it can fight off these common colds and, these typical things that we encounter in our daily life. I think you have to address that, in your home first. But, you know, I say this all the time and I'll relate it back to CBD. It's like, CBD is amazing at calming pets and it acts on certain pathways like our serotonin pathway and things like that. It helps engage the cannabinoid system to help, balance mood and things like that. However, if your pet is overweight, they are eating ultra processed food, you are in the house and you might not be getting along with your spouse and you're yelling all the time and there's stress and there's the job, and it's like how many things does CBD have to lift up to fix all those things. So I think, yeah, it's always important to point out, like, you got to look at your lifestyle a little bit and really start making those choices for yourself. And I think it's our duty as pet owners to take care of ourselves just as much, because if we're not healthy, how can they be? I talked a lot about this and I know you just talked to her too, Dr. Barry Sands, and she has really changed my whole perspective on how we interact with our pets and just in general our relationships, and how much effect our mind and our heart can really change the way we interact with other people and other beings for that matter. So I think, this is the holistic way of, like, we're not just addressing the whole body, we're addressing the world around us and how we interact with it. And I think that's a better way to kind of explain holistic health is like, it is so much more than just like supplements and diet. It is, how we are, our our relationships are and how we're treating people. I think that's a bigger topic than we're discussing today, but I think it's worth noting because I think sometimes we want to just have a pill for something and cross our fingers and hope it works. But I think, the idea behind taking this holistic approach is to, yes, let's use supplements, let's feed better food, but let's work on ourselves. Let's work on how we feel, how, our breath work and all those different things, because especially with our pets, they are so in tune with their world and we are their world, and they rely on us to manage their mood a lot of times and we don't realize it. And so making sure our mood is in a calm state and we're taking care of ourselves will really help their overall health as well.
I Between yesterday and today, everything is making me want to cry. I'm, like, tearing up over here. But I also think that, just every time I'm in the presence of Dr. Barry Sands, I'm like, she is such a safe energy that she and Pam Roussel, I literally, like, I get in their energy field and my body is like, "I'm gonna cry now." Like, I don't know what it is. But, yeah, no, she's amazing, and I think that one thing you said to kind of pull me out of this, little emotional state that I'm in, that bothers me so much, and I talk to people about this a lot, especially the people that, I'm mentoring through a certification program that I work with, is that is one of the things that we really have to train ourselves to do, is to get out of that idea, like, the idea that there is a pill for every ill. So instead of, okay, this is what's going on with this dog, what can I give them? Which is always the first question out of almost everybody's mouth. I want, like, I try to teach people to say, okay, what do we need to do to support this dog in a more holistic way? Which to me means addressing their environment, addressing the energy in the home, like, there's so many things that we can affect change on before we ever reach for a supplement.
Yeah.
Not to say that we don't need supplements because, like I just said before, we live in a very toxic world, and we can do the absolute best we can to feed the best diet and, even try to source regeneratively farmed and ranched plants and animals and do all the things. But, like, our soil doesn't have the same nutrient level that it did 100 years. Like, our air and our water,
Yeah.
glyphosate is ubiquitous. Like, it's falling in the rain and even on the organic crops. Like, the rain is full of glyphosate. Like, there are still things that we are going to have to do, and we do have to, unfortunately, I think, reach for supplements in a lot of cases. But yeah, so that's my TED Talk. Thank you for coming.
No, I think there's a couple things there. You can't, the typical saying I've heard, on the human side, especially, is you can't out supplement a bad diet.
Yeah.
But I would even argue a step further. You can't out supplement a toxic environment.
Yeah.
And that goes to, like, your living situation, what it's like in the home. And
Mhm.
and if it's just constant stress, and I'll just be totally honest, I think with my soul dog Tito, one of the biggest things that I learned from him, because we always say this in every podcast I've ever done, is like, they are our best teachers. And what I learned from him and what I think he did for me is, I was going through a really tough time and I put him under a lot of stress. I moved during COVID. Like, I changed my living situation. I brought in a dog 6 months prior that was blind and deaf. That's my Iggy girl. Like, all these things I stacked on him. And I think he just took it on for me because they love us so much. And they go, I'll take this for you. And it breaks my heart to talk about it. Sorry to bring it back to the emotional level. But the point is like, I think we kind of discount, our current situation sometimes. The other side of it is, I think when we do supplement things, if you really want to understand how a supplement works and you want to, you've already done the due diligence of making sure it's a quality product and there's third party lab testing and all that good stuff. I think it's important to mention, I can't discount enough, to journal. And journaling can be in the form of a couple things. It could literally be a note in your phone. It could literally be on a scratch piece of paper. with the date and something that you can reference. And that could be like starting on our glutathione on day 1 to day 30 and just looking back. Because a lot of times, if you can bring that to even your traditional vet and say, I journaled about this and this is what I saw, they can probably gain a lot of insight into the living situation and how to address the pet in front of them, which is what the best vets I've worked with do. Is they don't address just across the board broad stroke, every pet needs this, or I do this for every pet with this issue. I think it's important to journal because you can give that veterinarian some really great insight into what's going on a day-to-day basis. So it also kind of tells you what's going on at home too, because if you can look back and go, oh, they had a really bad day that day. What was going on with me? And then you think about it and you're like, oh yeah, that's usually can help you just as much as the veterinarian, if not more, help the pet owner kind of understand what's working and what isn't.
Mhm. So this might be the hardest question of the whole interview. I think we've established how important glutathione is in the body. Yes, the body makes it on its own, but sometimes, a lot of times, there's just not enough to go around for everything that it needs to be doing, and as we age, we naturally produce less of it. That being said, even though I know this and I have known this for many years because I was trained on it, I still haven't reached for it a lot prior to this product, at least, because I just kept hearing it's nasty. My dog won't take it. Right. And then I feel like I'm recommending a supplement that somebody wasted their money on because they can't even get it in their dog. Talk to me about how we get this product into our dogs.
Yeah, I mean, with everything we make, we have concentrated forms that are not going to be a animal that primarily needs meat protein. And also like, feeding a sufficient amount of protein to your animal is a great way to improve glutathione production. However, again, as they age, it's tough. And as they age, they do get pickier sometimes, especially if they're really feeling crappy.
Mhm.
So our whole thing is make the experience enjoyable. And that's anywhere from the hemp side to the mushroom side and to, colostrum and glutathione. We want to make palatable options. We want to make treat forms. That's easy delivery mechanism. But like you said with your pet, she won't eat treats. And we understand that. So I think, in my opinion, having a capsule in a powder form and then having a glutathione that's encapsulated, you can easily mix it in something yummy. There are so many products out there that are really palatable and stinky enough that the pet owner knows the favorite treat that they can sneak this in. So I'll give you an example. Because Tito, my little guy, when he was going through his cancer issues, he was not eating anything. I couldn't get anything in his body. So I had to have the most elaborate way to get in his body. And what I did was and this is not ideal nutritionally, but when your pet is basically dying, you'll do anything to get food in their body because you're like, dude, you have to eat. I need you.
Yep.
And this is the selfish part of Sean, the pet owner, talking. So what I did was I took a piece of ham, lunch meat, I put honey on the ham. I sprinkled honey on the ham. Then I would sprinkle most of his supplements, primarily was the Max Life at that time with the glutathione. I'd sprinkle that on the honey. And then I would sprinkle cheese all over the honey. And I would roll it up like in like a little tube. And I would break it off and give it to him in chunks. And he would actually eat that. That was the only way I can get it in his body. And that is like the most extreme case. But, most dogs, if you can just mix it in their food, great. That's fine. If you can just mix it in a light snack with some like freeze dried, powder that you can crumble from a treat, great. Whatever you got to do to get it in their body, but make the experience enjoyable. What I don't want parents to worry about is their stress levels going up and giving it to them so much.
Mhm.
Now their pet is stressed and they know something's up.
Yeah.
And we hear this a lot with like cat owners and giving, CBD in the oil form to their cat. And it's like, hey, no, no, we don't need to stress about this. Make the experience enjoyable. And at worst, with like a cat on the hemp side, even putting it on their paw, maybe they don't get the desired dose you're going for, but them just licking a little bit off will at least engage their cannabinoid system. But for a pill or a powder, I really think just finding sneaky ways to put it in something really yummy is better than not getting anything in their body or having to go further. And now you're so stressed, you got to take them to the vet. Well, they're already stressed because you're stressed, and now you're taking them to the vet, which I don't know any animals that are pumped about going to the vet unless you have a vet like I've had in the past that like is in a house and it's a little bit more
Mhm.
unsettling, but those are few and far between for most people. So I think finding that like special treat and making it more of a reward of like, hey, I'm going to give you that special treat, but also I'm sneaking this in on the back end is such a better way. And then we also have a whole host of YouTube videos and how we mix our supplements in, and we're not necessarily using the new product in the videos, but we are using our mushroom capsules that have CBD in them, that it has a smell to it. It's pretty pungent. Our colostrum or any of our other products that we've used in the videos where we're just like, hey, this is how we mix it in. We use warm water to make it bring out the smell of the freeze dried meat, but we have a number of ways we can do that, and we have plenty of information on the site as well. But our YouTube is a really good resource for like how to sneak stuff in pets food without you having to stress about it.
I like that a lot. I need that in my life right now because she is, yeah. I actually, most of her supplements are not like that. Most of her supplements are food supplements.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah. Like that, there's always times when you're like, how am I going to get this in my dog?
Yeah, I had that issue with pets that were on pharmaceuticals. Like
Yeah.
some of the pills you get are like really big, and
Yeah.
like I can crush it up and put it in powder and stuff like that, but it's like it's still gross.
Hmm.
It's not going to taste good to them, and eventually they're going to get in the habit of knowing it. So you can make it kind of fun for yourself, and if you feed like us where you're probably having like a whole production about it, you can make it a little bit more extensive in the sense of like you can create variety for them, and you can introduce new things that hey, I haven't tried. Like we have a company here in Colorado that sells these giant anchovies, and I thaw them. They're frozen when we get them, like they're in big blocks and they're huge anchovies. And what I would do with Iggy is I would just like smush those up into like a fish mush, and it was disgusting, but she loved it. And I can put anything in that stuff. She didn't care what it was. She would eat it. So I think people sometimes just kind of like overwhelm themselves, which then, leaches onto our pets and they sense that. But I think there's so many good products out there and whole food, meat sources that we can give to animals and sneak this stuff in. And I don't want people to have more stress than they're trying to reduce in their pet.
Yes, we need stress reduction for sure. Um, all right. Well, I think I might could get this out earlier, so people can hear about you needing participants for the study, um, and we can make that happen. So, how do people sign up for that, or send you information for that, or what are you looking for? How
Yeah,
did how
definitely reach out to earthbuddypet.com. You can just go to our contact us page and just let us know that you're interested. Also, Dr. Ruth and her whole community and the holistic pet health coaches are going to be really pushing this out there. And then I'm going to be relying on people like yourself and your community and all the awesome people that we work with to really get the word out, because we want as many enrollments as possible. We want as many people to be involved as possible, because even if they don't get selected for the actual study, we are going to create some things to, at least incentivize or discount the product. And they can actually follow along with the study, even if they're not selected, because we want as much feedback as possible. What we don't know about glutathione and the dosage side is like we have a very low kind of starting dose on our product, but we want more feedback in the way of like different size animals, because what we find with dogs is like, one, there's just like, they could be the same size dog, but they might not need as big of a dose. So we want to be very detailed in how we explain the dosage of this product, just like CBD and hemp. There's different molecules, there's different extracts that people use. We want to be as extensive as possible and detailed as possible when we're explaining dosage. There's probably not going to be a one size fits all, because we don't know where your pet's at. Your pet could be young, but just can be experiencing some itchy scratchies. Or your pet could be 17 and literally looking like they're on death's door and might need a larger dose. We don't know this. So we want to be very clear like, hey, we're just starting low and going slow, as we typically do with all supplements. But the feedback that we can get from this is incredible, because we can help so many other pet owners understand how to use these products better.
Awesome. And that link to Earth Buddy will be in the show notes. And also, if you want to purchase anything from Earth Buddy, Sean was very, very gracious and gave us a discount code TPPR. So you can use that at checkout at earthbuddypet.com.
Everybody pet, yeah.
Earthbuddypet.com. Again, that will be in the show notes for you guys. I'm super excited for this because like I just I mean, I work with so many dogs, like just like you. I work with so many dogs that they just need help, need support. Like we live in a toxic world and, pet parents they learn something and then they beat themselves up because they're like, "I didn't know." And it's like, "Okay, great. You do now. Let's move forward."
Yeah. I think to that point, Jessica, is like, so often our community, we want to help pets. We are like, I want you to have the experiences I've had with my animals, where I can change their health and I can visibly see it, and I give them that quality of life. But so often we can sometimes overwhelm pet owners, especially if they're coming from, I'm feeding ultra processed kibble. I have no concept that my lifestyle and living situation is toxic, or relationships that I'm having in front of the animals are leaching onto them and causing them more stress, and we overwhelm them. And so what I really think is important to point out is like, I don't want to overwhelm anybody. I want them to really, you know, if they're trying all these things, or they're new to working with you, I think even adding this in a small amount at a certain level to start at minimum can really help their overall health at minimum. What we really want to see is that it's really kind of clearing these things out. So all the good foods and all the good practices that they're changing in the home, of like, air fresheners and cleaners and all that stuff, and fertilizers on the lawn, they can start addressing those. But like, I think at minimum, this can really kind of kickstart that and almost expedite it in a lot of ways for so many pets that are just challenging and we can't figure out. To the study point, the other thing we're going to be looking at is not just liver enzymes, is we're going to be asking them daily questions on, what are you seeing in your pet? What is their demeanor like? Are they digesting food better? We also add milk thistle in there. So that's going to increase bile flow and production and help with the elimination of these toxins. So I really think that we want to understand not just, seeing that the liver enzymes go down as a baseline, but we want to see their overall health improving throughout the process. So I think it's going to be really exciting to see the results of it. I have no doubt they're going to be great, but I'm really curious on all the feedback we're going to get from it, because I think we're going to see some things that we didn't expect. And that's always the fun. We've done some studies on the hemp side and we got some really cool insights from it. And so I have no doubt we're going to get it from this as well.
That's awesome. Well, I think that's a great place to end. Thank you so much for being here, Sean, and for putting out such amazing products for our pets and for caring to actually do studies like this and see what's happening and just to know to do better with like dosing and all of the things. So, thank you for that. And Guys, I just want to say thank you for being here, for listening to the Pet Parenting Reset podcast. I am just so grateful for you and for what you are doing in affecting change in your pets' lives. Keep sharing it on social media so more people can see it, and sharing what you're doing so that they know that it's all the wonderful natural things that we have to be quiet about sometimes, but we don't wanna be quiet about it. So, have a great rest of your week. Please give your pet some extra love from me and from Sean this week, and I will talk to you next week.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thanks, Sean.